Hi everyone, it's Danny from Orchid Nature. Today I thought of making a sort of a top 5 things that actually help me keep my orchids healthier. Now I will not discuss about certain conditions, growing conditions like temperature and light and so on for specific orchids. I do have a lot of videos on those. Also there's a lot of good information on the internet, but I will talk about some stuff that are not very well mentioned in articles, and I think they are just as important. So here is my top 5 things that help you keep your orchids healthier. Now at number 5 is ventilation, and I think the subject is somewhat covered in some articles. Now the thing with ventilation is you actually want to avoid stale air. You don't actually want to have winds, but stale air can actually promote fungi, molds, and all sorts of things that are actually parasitic creatures, and they can tap into the orchid's system and actually devour it. It can be fatal if you're dealing with small seedlings or very sick orchids. So about ventilation, what you can do actually is open your window. All you need to do is refresh the air, don't have any stale air. But in some cases you cannot open the window because it's very cold outside, or it's just or conditions are not proper. So what you can do is actually use a fan. You don't have to make it blow directly into your orchids, but moving the air around in your growing area can actually limit greatly the appearance of molds and stuff like that. So I think it's a very, very important aspect to keep in mind in order to have healthy orchids. Now on the 4th place we have watering. I will not refer here to overwatering or underwatering. We all know about those. But the actual technique of watering an orchid. In the summertime or very warm and dry conditions, you can get away with a bit of sloppiness. If you get a bit of water in the stem, it can dry out until nighttime. But the real problem is in cold temperatures and humid environments, especially if you don't have ventilation. Improper watering technique can actually kill your orchid in a matter of days. So what you want to avoid is not only getting water into the crown here, but also getting water in the stem, so where the leaves actually meet right here. This is for Phalaenopsis orchids. And also you don't want to get any water in the new growths of Oncidiums and Dendrobiums, or for Oncidiums you really don't want to get water here trapped next to the pseudobulb and the leaf. Now, how can you do that in the winter time? Because usually we water from above. Well, it's really simple. You just have to dive the pot into a decorative pot of water. It's better to wet the roots that are in the soil because they're very adapted to medium in general and to moisture, and it's okay if you don't necessarily super water the roots from above. They're used to a lot of air, so they will not suffer if you don't soak these guys too well. Also be careful with misting so you don't get any water here. Now getting water where you shouldn't can cause crown rot, of course, but also stem rot and rotten pseudobulbs, and this type of disease actually kills an orchid in a matter of days or a week, so you really need to be careful. So if you're not sure if your environment is a bit too cold or too wet, it's better to actually dive the orchid into a pot of water and let the medium soak up the water rather than pouring it from above. When the summertime comes, you can be more relaxed with this subject, but in the winter time I do suggest you are very, very careful with this. On the 3rd place, we have something that you already know, but I would like to mention again because it's really important, and this is providing extra ventilation in your orchid pot. Doing this will actually keep you super safe from root rot. I don't think I've ever experimented any root rot with my orchids that are repotted this way, and this is because the pot is so well ventilated that even if you water a bit too often, the roots will still breathe, they will still be healthy, and they will not be prone to any rots whatsoever, even if you kind of water too much. So having these holes or slits or whatever ventilation in the pot actually is a lifesaver for orchids, and you can do this for any type of orchid. You can do this even for Cymbidiums if you'd like. So ventilation in the pot is, I think, the 3rd most important thing in order to keep your orchids healthy. The 2nd most important thing is to actually have a sort of a first aid kit for your orchids. Some stuff that you can easily find and keep in your house all the time, because if you notice something you can intervene very fast. And I'll show you what my first aid kit contains. First off is hydrogen peroxide. Now this stuff can actually help you in so many cases. It doesn't work so well with bacterial infections, but they tend to be rare compared to other illnesses. So this thing works tremendously good with rots and fungus of any sort, or just disinfecting roots, making sure you kill off all parasites when you repot. This is a great thing to have around. It's super cheap, and yeah, you can always have this bottle around. If you see that you have a small fungal infection, use this, spray this, it will work wonders. Also, some household cinnamon will work great. You want the powder version, you don't want the sticks. You want the powder because you actually want to tap cinnamon on freshly cut wounds, or any type of wounds actually. Don't use it on roots, it tends to dry pretty much. So anything that you cut and that is an open wound that can infect itself, use some cinnamon on it, and this will dry it so fast. Also, it may contain some antifungal or antibacterial properties. I'm not sure if household cinnamon does this, sorry, but anyway, the thing is, it dries it really well, and it can avoid reinfecting of wounds, and also in crown rots. After using hydrogen peroxide, after you dry out the crown very well, you can sprinkle cinnamon dust to keep it very dry and to not let the infection move forward. So these are the two top things that I like to have in my first aid kit. Then there's a bit of alcohol. I use this alcohol to sterilize my tools whenever I work with them. This will limit spreading viruses between your orchids or other parasites or illnesses. Now, I don't have rubbing alcohol, which is something different, but you can use rubbing alcohol to disinfect, as well as to eliminate some parasites like mealybugs or aphids. You can work with that. I'm not sure if this type of alcohol works. I'm doing some experiments. For me, it's just for disinfecting stuff. I don't use it on orchids, but if you have rubbing alcohol, you can definitely use that on orchids, mixed with water and some dish soap, I believe. So it's a good thing to have in your kit, both to sterilize your tools and to get rid of some parasites. If you're okay with using toxic things, you can keep in your kit some fungicide. That will work as well if you don't have hydrogen peroxide, or if you just feel comfortable with fungicide. You can also have a mild insecticide for very severe cases of insect damage, insect infestation. So yeah, an insecticide will work the best if you have a very massive infestation. So having a mild one actually helps as well. And we reached the number one thing that keeps my orchids healthy, and this is attention. Now, I'm referring here to giving your orchids a few minutes at least once a day. It doesn't need to be a hassle. It can be a relaxing thing when you have your coffee or right before you go to work. Give them a look. Don't necessarily look at the flowers, but also give the leaves a look, and the stems and pseudobulbs and crowns and so on. And if you look at them once a day, you can actually spot things when they occur, because 24 hours actually makes the difference between a dead orchid and a live one in the case of crown rot. So intervening at the appropriate time actually can save your orchid. If you look at them briefly for a few minutes to see if there's anything wrong every day, it can actually prevent a lot of stuff. This is what I do with my orchids. I give them all my attention. Usually if I see a small flower spike struggling to get out of the leaves, I can pull it off without me being too late to save it, and so on. You can see small infestations with pests, you can see rots, you can see all sorts of stuff if you just check every single day. So yeah, I don't know about you, but I do like to look at my orchids. I just live in such a big city full of concrete that even looking at the foliage relaxes me and makes me feel better, because it's a life thing, and it's just beautiful the way it is. So yes, I believe attention is the number one thing you can do for your orchid. Give them a bit of attention just to spot things early. You have much more chances of actually saving your orchid if you spot things early. Okay, hopefully you've enjoyed this. If you want to see other videos regarding orchids, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And if you want to get in touch with our community and share your orchid stories or ask us for our advice and opinion, then visit orchidnature.com. So if you have other questions or suggestions, just place them in a comment below. I'll see you next time. Bye bye!